Hello. Um, I just wanted to say, Zandros, great video. Um, but Dave, please react to Zandros's video.
Chemistry is more about molecules and physics is more about like subatomic particles and atoms and stuff, but chemistry still deals with atoms. Like where the edges are exactly is kind of blurred. And when it comes to philosophy, which exactly are the main branches and which exactly are the things that branch off from those sort of depends on the exact map that you want to draw. Ironically, that
Which is a primary argument for anti-realism, or um, a more pragmatic approach between realism and anti-realism. Uh, yeah, that there kind of is a world that science describes perfectly, or that the world is not so perfectly described by science based on the trial and error aspects of the scientific method. It's a highly complicated issue. That's why I advocate for anti-realism, which is a way of advocating for the oppressed, um, the disenfranchised. Um, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Dave is a reality fascist. If you're a normal person that just can't afford to go on dates, he'll say you're an incel. You deserve to have no pussy because I'm rich. I get to have a hot wife that totally doesn't get fucked by Carson Paul Lee, Dioplatanus Ambitheus in my dreams. That he gets to say that because he's a multimillionaire, a fake revolutionary that relies on slavery, genocide, apartheid, terrorism, war, whatever else. He's a reality fascist. And this video, if he were to actually react to it and respond to the scathing takes that I have about him, he would lose a significant amount of his fan base due to being clowned on and dog walked.
That in and of its own right is kind of an interesting philosophical question. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to go with the 4 most common core philosophical domains. Some people might want to say there's 5 or 6 core areas. Today we're going to take those other ones and tuck them right up the butt cheeks of the core 4. These are metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and logic. Let's start with metaphysics. Metaphysics is about asking what reality is like at the most fundamental level. What actually exists? What is space? What is time? What is matter? What is consciousness? And I like talking about metaphysics because I feel like in the
Dave would say, metaphysics? You think things are about and above reality? What are you, fucking crazy? You fucking delulu. You anti-reality. Blah, 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 blah. Like a rant about nonsense. Just pandering to his anti-theist cult. Not only like anti-theist cult, but cult of personality. Yeah.
modern scientific world, a lot of metaphysical questions which are hard to answer because they're metaphysical.
I mean, metaphysically, he is an a optimistic nihilist. He thinks that, and a scientific reductionist, a philosophical naturalist, so to speak. Those 3 things I would say Dave is. Now, he could say entirely, oh, no, 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 I'm not that. I'm actually an idealist, and completely 180, go the other direction and grift harder, but in the direction of like religion, which is even more funny. He's half enlightened now compared to an ambitheist, and he could just reduce his enlightenment down to the theistic level. Very funny stuff.
Physical questions. Our society tends to assume are questions that will be answered by science at some point. A lot of people think that if we have a theory of quantum gravity that will solve what consciousness is, or something like that. Science experiment X will solve philosophy question Y, which to me is a mismatch of, like, that's a category error. One of those things is physics and the other is metaphysics. For example, you could ask, why is there a tree growing in that field? And the physics answer is, because a seed fell there. Okay, but why did a seed fall there? Because gravity acted on the seed. Okay, why did gravity act on the seed? Because the planet had gravity and the seed.
Yeah, this is relating to the video that I just did yesterday, talking about Elysianisms and related syncretic or uh, ontologically similar and epistemologically similar viewpoints, such as baseline thelema, which is what Elysianism is based on, and Advaita Vedanta, as well as is it Dogshin Buddhism, as well as Zen Buddhism that Crowley studied. I know he studied the Chinese kind as well as the and Tibetan, and like he studied, he went all over the place, really. I mean, he was an enlightened dude.
Fell towards the planet. Okay, but why did the planet have gravity? And you can see that at a certain point, you end up running up against some fundamental question of physics, and most modern people's take seems to be, yeah, but science has done so much, so who's to say that in the future we won't solve that problem with science? But science, really, it tells you how things work. It doesn't tell you why the answer...
Yeah, and I don't think Dave will ever be able to cope with that. He's just going to start ranting about, well, you shouldn't even ask why. Why is a stupid question? It's like, dude. Like, I agree. Why? Because you're stupid. Why, God? Why? Because you're stupid. Because you're stupid. It's one of those things, like relating to my earlier video. I might have deleted it a while back. It was about progressive revelation and basically saying, like, well, why did God not tell the ancient Jews or the ancient Canaanites or the ancient Phoenicians or whoever, or the ancient Egyptians? Maybe they did tell the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Greeks, and maybe they did tell the ancient Greeks. Being gay is okay. Let's talk about quantum physics, particle physics. Let's talk about cancer, and like how to cure it. You get the idea. Like, this is all a progressive revelation thing, wherein like we are an active participant in God's revelation and God's experience of itself through ourselves. And that's something Dave is an anti-theist about. Like, he's just going to deny it, because he is, like I said, those three philosophical schools, most likely at least. He may claim that he's an agnostic atheist and that he's a academic, an academicist. But that's bullshit. I mean, he's very dogmatic. He's very like he's like one of the people that the Illuminati did not expect to arise and in conflict with the enlightened pantheist that they envisioned ruling over magically the society of atheists that they wanted to create. And I imagine some of them did realize, hey, maybe the atheist and the pantheist are going to butt heads eventually. And who knows, maybe they predicted this whole conversation, this whole situation. But they wouldn't have been able to predict the specific physics-based inquiries and discussions and answers and such related to the discussion as a whole. They understood the basics of it, as a lot of it was naturally and inherently extrapolable from the base reality that they experienced, as well as the tradition that they were in.
As to how it works are the way they are necessarily, unless that why is another how for a deeper question. Like, the first person to ever dissect a human and find out that we've got a bunch of different organs would kind of have figured out how the body works, but they wouldn't have figured out why it is that way. But then once we have evolution, we kind of know why those organs are there, because we've turned it into a new how, the how being the deeper
and that is metaphysics based in physics, based in biology, it's a little cornucopia of information.
thing underlying biology, which is the process of evolution. But then you're left with okay, but why does evolution exist as a concept? And that one's a bit more abstract to answer. That's not a terminating point. We can figure out why by turning it into a new how, but the next how is going to be something like a mathematical model of how things reproduce. And then you're left with fundamentally, why does the universe abide by that mathematical model? And that gets to a point where a thing just kind of is the way it is, you know? Like, why do all...
Yeah, that's similar to my other video. The point in which I was talking about, like, the causality of conspiracy theories and skepticism. Why do people disbelieve the official narrative? Well, there's not exactly a cause and effect reason. It just sort of is that way. You know, like, people are just a little kooky. You know, I mean, some people will believe that the moon landing is fake, and there's nothing you can do about it. Some people will believe that the Earth is flat. You can't do anything about it, and it's kind of pointless and annoying and mean in a lot of ways to intentionally put yourself out there and say, hey, you can't believe that. I'm gonna talk shit on you. I'm gonna fucking harass you until you decide to leave the internet. Until you decide, I'm gonna forcibly excise you and forcibly, exile you from the internet. It's psycho. It's fucking psychopathic. Just fucking let people be who they are. Let them do what they want to do. You don't have to be a debunker about everything, about everyone. Yeah? What? Okay, Mom, bye.
Against. Actually, technically, you'll end up in one of three places. Either with a thing just being the way it is in a way that's not justified, like there's nothing deeper than it saying it must be this way, it just arbitrarily is that way for no particular reason. Or there's an infinite regress of things embedded in deeper things, so there'll be some equation that explains the
funky and junky universe, yeah.
Universe, but there's a deeper equation that explains that equation, and then there's a deeper equation still that explains that equation, and it just goes on for infinity. Or it will be finite and it will be in a loop. So equation X explains the entire universe, but equation Y tells you why equation X is the way it is, and equation Z tells you why equation Y is the way it is, but equation X then tells you why equation Z is the way it is. It really has to be only one of those three things fundamentally, because
there's really only three options, and they may coexist eternally in a doxastic sort of triune nature. And this goes into theology and metaphysics as a whole, which not already, he's been talking about metaphysics, but this is metaphysics, obviously. But it goes into theology related to metaphysics and metaphysics of theology. Metaphysics of theology and theology of metaphysics. It's very weird.
It can't really be any other things. And if you think about it, an infinite regression and a finite loop are in and of themselves both just things that are the way they are. So kind of all of them are some version of unjustified first principle, meaning that the metaphysics that underlies reality is just fundamentally a bit inscrutable, which is why science and religions and individual people all have completely different answers to these questions. Now we're starting...
Yeah, exactly.
To significantly brush up against epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, belief, and justification. If anyone tries to tell you that piss is stored in the balls, just remind them that piss is quite clearly located after the E and before the etymology. Anyway, epistemology asks, what...
Oh dear God, that's funny. Etymology.
Anyone tries to tell you that piss is stored in the balls, just remind them that piss is quite clearly located after the E and before the etymology. Anyway, epistemology asks, what is knowledge? How do we actually know anything? Can we trust our senses? And what distinguishes knowledge from opinion? I'm sure you can already sense that the difference between metaphysics and epistemology is already ever so slightly blurry, as are the borders between all the different subfields, as well as which overarching field each subfield belongs to the most.
Let's look at that again. That is awesome. Meta-ethics, normative ethics, applied ethics, moral theory, value theory, aesthetics, philosophy of beauty, philosophy of art, social and political philosophy, social philosophy. Yeah. Philosophical methods, thought experiments, experimental philosophy, intuitions, and then philosophy just in the middle. modal logics, um, deontic logic, epistemic logic, logical and philosophical methods, temporal logic. What is that? Alethic modal logic, the logic of possibility and necessity. Okay. Formal classical logic. Yeah, I mean, it's philosophy of mind over here. Yeah. Epistemology. Yeah.
Between all the different subfields, as well as which overarching field each subfield belongs to the most. But broadly speaking, if we're talking about whether it's even possible to know something, that's a conversation about epistemology. Generally, a scientifically minded person's take on metaphysics and epistemology will be to assume that the physical universe is a material thing that really exists and that consciousness emerges from it, but the physical universe...
What does that even mean, though? What does that... Like, what does that even mean? Like, you have to define the terms. Otherwise, you're just saying words and stuff, and it's just... You know, like, it's not... It's circular logic, as you can kind of tell. The world and reality is physical and material. What is physical and material? Well, it's physical and material. What is physical and material? Eternally in a circle. Try defining anything without defining itself by itself in reference to just like pointing at it and saying, you know this. And that's what Plato was talking about with his eternal forms, was that it's complicated. And a true philosopher is someone that can see past the discussion and the apparent reality and understand the, whatever it is, the essence, the mumbo jumbo, whatever the fuck you want to say, the word soup, that isn't word soup, like it's a word salad or word, that isn't word salad. They're actually with the stuff and things that they purport to think about, which is either thoughts or the subject of thoughts or the energy of beingness. They're at one with it. And they're not struggling in it, Or if they are, they're doing so with intentionality to cause some effect. Or that their struggling is predetermined through the bare essence and necessity of beingness. And ultimately, it may even be the unconscious result of someone else who dislikes them making them struggle and flail in paradise.
Directly observable, you only observe whatever occurs within your consciousness. There is no objective way to observe the physical universe because any observation necessarily occurs from a point of view which limits the universe in various ways, and those limits are the only way by which we can come to know what the universe is even like. So you could argue, as I do, that materialism, the idea that the universe is this material thing that is separate from our consciousness, is in and of itself only a model that exists within our consciousness, right? It's a map of reality, but it's not...
So he has a compatibilist, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatibilist, more pragmatic view on realism and anti-realism, which is really the truth of what all of us have. I who claim to be a true anti-realist, and Dave, who claims to be a true realist, we're both lying to ourselves. Sorry, my cat's in the closet. Hey, kitty. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. This is a fantastic video. I'm gonna link it in the description. How long has this been? 1928? Okay.
reality itself, if that makes sense. That's just my weird take though. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this.
There's no illegal drugs in my garage.
Oh, yes, there is, and there's evidence of it.
Hello there.
Alright, thanks. Back to the video.
Fucking funny.
There's also a variety of religious takes on metaphysics, which also have
Subscribe to him. Subscribe to Xandros. I'll link him as the channel that I link at the end.
an epistemological element to them. For example, there's the belief that God exists, even though God isn't directly observable. Again, it's a metaphysical claim. You can make arguments that a certain God doesn't exist because the specific claims being made either don't make sense, or there's certain ahistorical parts of whatever religious scripture is involved, but disproving just the broad category of God is, again, a very difficult thing to do because, again, it's a metaphysical question. You can debunk the specifics of a religion, very hard to debunk the specifics of an answer to the metaphysical question, though. And if a claim is unfalsifiable, that does make it unscientific, but that doesn't necessarily mean wrong, it just means it's the kind of thing that science...
That is something that I ponder on and I grapple with regularly, is like, is it bad for a system to be 100% unfalsifiable in every single way? Probably not, actually. It might be pretty good, in all honesty. Like, if you find a system of philosophy and metaphysics and ontology and epistemology and ethics and morals that is unfalsifiable 100%, that may just be correct. I mean, who knows?
Can't interact with.
And that's the thing. If there's more than one that are like that, then we have some issues.
Mock this kind of thing by saying, well, I've got an invisible unicorn. And then when someone asks you, well, can I hear it? It's like, no, it's also silent. Okay, can I touch it? And you go, no, it's impossible to feel. And then they go, okay, well, it doesn't exist then if there's no way to interact with it. And you go, oh, no, it really does exist. It just has the same standard for evidence that your God does, which is kind of funny, but also there are implications on what we would normally consider science here. Like, we think there might be this thing called dark matter. Long story short, when we look up into the universe, galaxies seem to be spinning faster than they should be. And the only way for them to spin this fast without flying apart is for them to have more gravity holding them together, and the only way that we know that that's possible is for there to be extra matter of some kind hidden within all...
Yeah, that's a very... I mean, this is basically the direction me and Dave's debate would go. So if you want to watch the rest of this video and realize where me and Dave's debate would end up, watch this video. I'm going to cut it here for now, and then, just upload the video. I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a good one. Love you, Dave. I don't tolerate you because you don't tolerate me, though. How's that for a paradox of tolerance? Although I would say I tolerate you more than you tolerate me, because I'm a lot more potent than you are in a lot of ways, as Crowley would say. Intolerance is impotence. Yeah, y'all have a good one.